Hello, I'm Joel Daring with the International Volleyball Hall of Fame. We are speaking one-on-one today with members of the induction class for 2014. This is Volleyball in Perspective. We're joined today by Joop Alberda from the Netherlands. Welcome.
Thank you.
You are being inducted today for your work as the architect and coach of the highly successful Netherlands men's national volleyball teams of the 1990s. You laid the foundation for that success when you were selected as a junior national team coach in the beginning of the 80s. You built your team on the groundwork laid by Hall of Fame coach Arie Salinger, who led the Dutch squad to a silver medal in the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. You were a student of the game, influenced by Hall of Fame coach Doug Beal and others. But you implemented your coaching style and systems of training and closed the gap pretty rapidly between your team and the top teams on the world stage. You guided the Netherlands to the gold medal at the 1996 FIVB World League, and that success continued on to the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games as the Dutch won their first ever Olympic Games gold medal in one of the sport's most thrilling finals, topping favorite Italy 3-2. You were proclaimed the FIVB best volleyball coach in the world after the two gold medal performances, and the Dutch public chose the 1996 Olympic performance the top sports moment of the 20th century. But we'll go back to the beginning. So tell us about your early involvement in sport and in volleyball.
Volleyball, I played in high school, not on a high level, and I was a soccer player, of course, and I did gymnastics. And when I was 13, I had to make a choice between soccer and gymnastics. I don't know if I took the right choice, but I chose for gymnastics, finding out a couple of years later that I was too tall and didn't have the right strength to be competitive and to be successful. And when I went after high school to try to become a PE teacher, some of the students picked me out and said, "Hey, why don't you play volleyball?" And so before I started serious at training, they made me a member of the club, not because I was a good volleyball player, I think, but because they needed some extra contribution and some money, because we were always lack of money.
So tell us, at that point, what were you thinking for a career? I know you're still going through school, but were you thinking about coaching and sport as a career, or did you have some other ideas for your future?
Now, I was pretty much into coaching. I combined that with the study, and I know that in the beginning of the 70s I had this idea, I don't know why, it was some sort of a crazy idea. I'd like to work with the best in the world, not knowing in what type of sport. I didn't know if it would be volleyball, although I was very much attracted to volley because of the strategy and the way of playing and the makeability of success. And the Netherlands were a talented nation for volleyball because we have an average of sound, tall people. But we are also a culture which was a non-performance culture. And still I had the idea that I would fit in best in a performance culture. And it was a dream which very slowly changed also in the Netherlands. In the middle 80s, we had a lot of huge talented guys like Blanchet and Ronzwerver, and we were very lucky that Arie Salinger came to Holland and changed the game and the mindset completely of volleyball.
So aside from his obvious influence, during that period of time you were coaching, who are some other coaches that really influenced you as you watched the game and you really became a student of the game?
Yeah, I traveled all over the world to see matches, to talk to people who were much more knowledgeable and experienced than I was, curious to find the keys to success. The two main influences were Anders Christiansson from Sweden, who built a fantastic team in the 80s and 90s, and Doug Beal, who I met in Båstad in Sweden when I got a scholarship of the Dutch Olympic Committee to go for a stage to Båstad, and there was a clinic of a lot of coaches. I spent some time during the night talking to Doug, and I know that I was inspired by the way how they conducted the 1984 Olympics, the preparation, the strategy behind it, and also the way of how you deal with people. it was more than only sports. It was a more holistic approach of the person, the physical component, the mental component, the strategy component, and that all together, that did push me something. And I was inspired by that. And I thought, well, is there any reason why a country like the United States could be Olympic champion? Why would a little country like the Netherlands not be successful if we have the ingredients like tall people? It's a three-dimensional sport. The fourth component is always speed, and we can speed up with a setter like Peter Blanchet. So why wouldn't we be successful, and why wouldn't we strive for the best?
Wow, that's fascinating. Now give us your key moments that, in terms of your career, your coaching career, the key stops and moves that finally put you at the helm of the national team.
I think my curiosity is one of the key factors, and being open to other influences and not having a rigid system of playing nor a rigid system of co-workers with me. I did discuss a lot with Peter Murphy, a high regarded coach in the Netherlands, who did the women's team. My first achievement was that after a couple of years I was appointed as a junior coach, and I saw these tall guys of say 12 to 14 years, already nearly 7 feet tall, and we thought, well, oh, wow, if this would be really intense in terms of dedication and they would really practice and become athletes, then this would be a giant team. We had 3 generations which did fit together, so you got a hierarchy in age and seniority and not only one group. I already mentioned the importance of Iris Hillinger, changing our mindset from being modest to more proud and present ourselves and have more presence as a nation in volleyball. The most important moment was probably when I played with the junior team in Pazarchik in Bulgaria, European Championships, and Doug offered already to join me to help me to make this team successful. And we beat the Russians for the first time, and we were in a pool with Yugoslavia, Poland, Russia. So that was in those days something for 3 losses for sure. And we won 3 and became 4th in the European juniors. And then slowly the mindset changed that it might be possible to be successful in the long run.
Wow. So I think a lot of people, when they think as students of the game, they look at the 80s. You can't help but look at the USA team, innovative, probably based on the personnel they had. We'll start with Karch. But the game was changing and coaches were looking at it differently. Teams were competing differently, the swing offense, the stack blocking. But I also think a lot of people look at the Netherlands the next decade and say, well, here was another coach who was very innovative. Tell us a little bit about the approach. You come on to now you're on the national team. You did close that gap quickly. Tell us about the work you did and how you saw the key things you were trying to do with your systems of play or the way you were putting that team together. I know you shared some of it that led you to such success.
Well, the first thing we did with my teammates, I had in every stage I needed different assistants because I saw a 4-year period with different needs. So I appointed different assistant coaches who were really expert in the field of team building, like Peter Murphy, and to find out what would be the perfect match in mental and physical state of the players. Second, we made the analysis about the speed of the game. We lost against Brazil, which they were obvious the best in '92 in the Olympics. And everybody was predicting that the Brazilians would stay at that top level for the coming 4 to 6 years. And that's something which is then taking me and saying, oh, if everybody says they're going to be the best, is that the truth, or can we find something new? And we had 2 youngsters coming up in the Netherlands, which was Bas van der Goor and Guido Geurtsen, 2 very talented young players, and I like young players for their new energy, and I like senior players for their quietness and their overview. And the combination of those two players made that we could play a concept in which everybody was always available. So we had a beautiful setter, Peter Blanchet, nearly 7 foot, and 5 others who were permanently available to attack, which made it extremely difficult for blockers and defensive to predict where we would have the hitting offense. And we could spread the load of attacking any way we wanted to do it. The third one, which was a key player, was our opposite, who had an elbow and an arm swing which distinguished him from all other offenses opposite players in the rest of the world. And the combination of height, strength, experience, and we added speed and the option that every specialist had 2 new options that changed the game again.
Amazing. A key match along the way, not before the gold medal, but a key match, a key championship, a key place where you said, hey, I think we can.
Well, our biggest opponent and rival was obviously Italy. And thanks to Italy, we became as good as we got. It takes 2 to tango.
Sure.
And we lost, I think, 8 finals before '96 against Italy. So we had a mental scratch that it was impossible to win against Italy. And we made the decision with the federation that in 1996 we wanted to have the World League finals in the Netherlands. So the Italians would not play at home. And all the other teams would have to cope with an extra jet lag if they would visit the Netherlands. And in this home ground, we thought if we have one chance without the Tifosi cheering their stars, and we have one time the result of winning against Italy, probably that will help us all the way along. We won pretty obvious, 22-20 in the 5th set. And in the preliminary, in the Olympics, we played against Italy, lost 3-0. But because of the win in Rotterdam in the World League finals, we had still the belief that it would be possible to win against Italy. Yeah. And we convinced the players that Italy was outplaying us on a level they've never performed before. So the prediction was that they would drop down a little bit. And 2 times winning in the same tournament is not so easy.
Yeah, well, I think most coaches would agree with that.
I think so.
Yeah, and and you've touched on this, but I think I remember Marv Dunphy talking about the 1988 team, and not in a way that was brash, but just would say, going in, we believed we had the greatest team, we had the best team if we played at that level. So how would you gauge the belief level of your players, even before that first match in the Olympics, as they went to that Olympic Games? Where do you think across the board the players were in their belief that they could come out of there with the gold medal?
I think that someone told me afterwards, it was a commentator, and he said, when you arrived with your team at Atlanta airport, you had to wait 2 or 3 hours before we had check-in, or 4 hours before we went to the Olympic Park. He said, I saw a team which was on a mission. All the players were just sitting down, not spending any energy on anything else, just sitting down, reading a book, knowing what would happen, and probably knowing that it was a 70-day event. We had another 23 days to go to the final, and all energy you lose, you might use in the finals. And that absolute focused concentration, that determined this team that they were really ready to go for. What do you imagine?
I think you've touched on it in some ways, but I'll just ask it to see if you want to fill in. How did you see your leadership style as a coach? How would you describe that?
I love people. I try to be as clear as possible. I never forget where I come from. I can handle people how strange they behave every now and then. It's situational leadership. It changes over the years, and it changes according to the circumstances. you cannot have a rigid style of leadership. You have to adapt to the situation. You have to adapt to the maturity of different players. So in the very end, we had some young players who are not so mature, but very skillful. And we had some senior players like Blanchet and Zwerver and Henk Jan Elt, who were very mature, but also very, very skillful. And if they have that combination, you have to give a lot of space of freedom that they take the decisions on the pitch, and the staff can run the rest. And I think the combination of accepting that on the very end, when a player is capable and mature, then and you give the responsibility to the players, then they can surprise you over and over again.
So we're an hour and a half before the gold medal match. Do you remember your comments to the team? Do you remember their comments to each other? Do you remember that mood in anticipation of that match?
About two things. We, as a staff, we said, how can we simplify the game? Just take 1, 2, or 3 options. The rest is obvious. We've been practicing, say, for 10 years, for 10,000 hours. If you're not ready, you'll never be ready. I remember how focused the players were, and I can smell the locker room. And probably that's the most fascinating thing about playing finals. The smell of the locker room will never leave that's something which is stuck into my brain.
So rich right then.
And it's a part of being scared.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's sure about the results. You can say that you're ready, but you don't know the result yet. So everybody's a little bit insecure, and still finding keys or anchors in visualizing your success, in knowing the statistics for some, having a good feeling about the shoulder, having good feeling about power in your legs. That total combination makes a team ready or not just non-ready.
It happened, the gold medal.
Yeah.
Just share your feelings, once, the final point's down, and then walk us just through a little bit about the impact for the Netherlands.
To be honest, it's about 18 years ago. I don't recall that.
Sure.
There's something like, it's not possible, not believing what really happened, seeing the cheering, all of a sudden see that the future king, which is now the king of the Netherlands, is amidst of us. I didn't notice him, I just saw it afterwards. I think Al Gore was on the stands as well. So we had a lot of cheering. Then you come, it's sort of a turmoil of emotions. Sure. I was tired, I was worn out, players were worn out. I know that I entered the television and the media center pretty late. And the impact, it was the last match more or less of the Olympics. What happened in the Netherlands, we discovered afterwards when we returned. Sure. And in 2000, there was a election, and they voted this moment as the best moment of the Dutch sport, which is the best recognition the team can get, which is a recognition for, say, more or less 25 to 30 players, 2 or 3 coaches, and a mission.
Yeah, and for the sport.
And for the sport, it was a big celebration. Sure. It was a proof that if you are dedicated and want to work hard and face difficulties and obstacles you can overcome, that it's possible to become successful. And the model we had starting in 1985 with Peter Murphy, then Ari Salinger, and then myself in that era was the model of sporting success afterwards.
And I'll ask this, we got one more after this, but I'll ask this question because I want to give you some room to really give us an idea of the impact, and I know you had an impact in a couple of ways. One, your own work after that gold medal that impacted the Netherlands, other sports in the Netherlands. international sports there, that period of time, and then at some point you move from that and you've done a lot of other things. So fill us in.
Oh,
I know it's a lot.
yeah, well, it's not a deliberate choice. I know that in the evening or the night after that we became Olympic champion, and I was looking pretty good because of my players became Olympic champion. That's the role, and that's the... I was invited by the president of the Olympic Committee, and he said, before you go to Italy for a lucrative contract, I want to talk to you that if we can use this model of way of thinking of you, you and the federation, for other federations, say for the Olympic team of the Netherlands. And in the late December, when I recovered a little bit of the Olympic Games, I decided to stay in the Netherlands, helping the Netherlands to make building a new roster for performance for all sports. And that change came together with economic changes, probably those were more important than our contribution, into a knowledge and to a perception that it was possible for a little country to strive for, say, the top 10 position in the world, only with 16 million people. And that was fascinating, that, and scary more or less, that if you're successful and winning a gold medal, people start believing that it's probably the right approach. And the first thing you have to do is to organize your own criticism, because sometimes people do lift you up, but you have to go down again. And so this organizing of criticism was the best learning moment, lessons learned for me after the gold medal. I joined the Olympic Committee for 8 years, so Nagano, Sydney, Salt Lake, and Athens, and found myself all of a sudden together with the best soccer coach, one of the best soccer coaches we have in Russia, guiding the Russian national soccer team, then changed over to professional cycling, which was probably one of the, well, that's every day scary because you never know who's going to be the next victim. And help now different federations to come over, changing from the new culture towards more performance-oriented programs like rowing, track and field, and swimming.
What's ahead?
I don't know. I think I'm more related again to volleyball. I want to help Volleyball Federation to become successful again, because there is no reason that we have the dip we have the last decade to accept that, not to work hard for it. We're good at beach volleyball. We're pretty good at the women's side, but the men's side had a decline, which is, I think, not acceptable. And so I want to give it a shot again in volleyball. What's next? I don't know. Few of the things which happened to me just happened. It was not a deliberate road. It was being curious, finding options, trying to improve every day again, be innovative in sport, stealing a lot of concept from other sports, because all problems in sport have been solved somewhere else.
Sure.
The only thing, well, my privileged journey through sport is that I experienced it myself in volleyball, saw it in a lot of other different types of sport, and can combine that and give it back to athletes and coaches.
And then there's only one question left. What does it mean to you to be inducted into the International Volleyball Hall of Fame?
Wow, it's more than appreciation, it's recognition, especially because it's done by people who are in the Hall of Fame already. It's a dream coming true, and it's an obligation. It's an obligation to give my knowledge and my experience to next generations, and be grateful to the sport that brought me where I am at this very moment.
Well, congratulations once again. We've been speaking with International Volleyball Hall of Fame Class of 2014 honoree, Joop Alberda. This is Volleyball in Perspective, and I'm your host, Joel Deering. Thank you for watching.